Tech by Tips.
Welcome to another Tech by Tips video. In this video we're going to be talking about the application named Prowlarr. This is an application that we're going to use to automatically update the indexers for all of our downloading applications, our search applications for the downloads, so that we don't have to manually keep adding the same data over and over again in different applications. This application is going to allow us to make the changes for the indexers in that application, and then it's going to synchronize all that configuration into all the other applications. So that's going to make our life a lot easier. It's going to be easier to maintain, and it'll prevent us from making mistakes while adding the data. So hope you enjoyed this video. Normally this video would go later in the series, but I wanted this video to be out first, so that you can make a reference to it when you're setting up your applications in the series, right? But in the playlist it's going to be moved back to where it should be, but I'm going to release it first so that you can have it as a reference. Thank you. Let's get to it. On this video we're going to be talking about the application named Prowlarr. It is a manager or proxy for our indexers that will be used by all of the other R's that we have installed. It is a .NET application based on C# and React, so looks very similar to the other R's, and it supports both Usenet and torrents, so it's a great application to have to manage our indexers for all of our other R's. It also works with other applications like Mylar, which is not an R, but it's one that we're suggesting we use for comics in the series. And yeah, it's supported very nicely for a good amount of people. It has 217 contributors. It's open source. You can find it in github.com/Prowlarr, and it has a lot of good, nice features. Like, for example, it natively includes 24 indexer support, and it allows you to create custom Usenet indexers and torrent indexers, and it's always adding more support for trackers for torrents and stuff. So I would say, yeah, we're gonna go ahead and set this up, because this will be very, very useful for our other applications. Now if we go back to our NAS, we'll see that we have already installed our two downloaders, which are qubittorrent and 7CBD, and we've installed our R's, which are Sonar for TV anime, Radar for movies, LiDAR for music, Mylar for comics, Radar for books. But for Radar we also needed the support of Calibre and calibre-web. So we have all of that set up, and they're ready. They're just right now missing indexers, and that's what we're going to solve with Prowlarr. So we go ahead into the registry, look for Prowlarr, and as usual we get the Linux server 1. We right click, select download this image, give it a little bit of time. Prowlarr is another small R application, so it shouldn't take a long time to download. It should prompt us soon about which version we want to download. So when we see that, we'll go for the latest version. Now we have it, we select, and now if we go to the image, we'll see that it started downloading Prowlarr. So we just let it do its thing. It shouldn't be too big. Calibre and calibre-web were exceptions, because those are more like full-fledged applications for operating system that it's actually like simulating a full system. That's why you see they're so big. But again, we have finished downloading Prowlarr, and as we can see, Prowlarr is 173 megs, so it's not that much. We select this, we click launch, and in here we're not going to do anything. We just click next. We rename this to Prowlarr. We select enable resource limitation and auto restart, because we don't want it to use all the resources from our host, and if it turns off for some reason we want it to automatically restart. Next thing we're going to do is we're gonna click on the advanced settings, and as usual we're gonna go here and add 3 options, which are gonna be our process user ID 1026, process group ID 100, and the time zone that we, in my case, are gonna use America, New York. We save this, and from here we're gonna go next. It's gonna by default listen on port 9696, but we are gonna open it in our host on port 8087 because we have 8080 all the way up to 8086. So that's the next available here, and we click next. The next thing that we're gonna do here is we're gonna add a folder for our configuration. So we're going to docker configs. We don't have one for Prowlarr, so we create one for Prowlarr. And now we select Prowlarr here, and that's going to be mapped to our /config in our container. We don't have to map anything else for this one because it doesn't download anything and it connects to the other applications directly. So we go next. We validate that our information is correct. We leave that checked. We click done. Now it's going to start creating our container and automatically starting it. So let's give it a little bit of time to do its thing. We go into containers, we see Prowlarr popping up, we select it, we click details, and we go into the logs. And now we should wait a little bit, and eventually we'll start seeing logs populated in here. And here we go, we see that it started logging stuff. So we're gonna usually wait for it to set itself up. We're going to keep refreshing until we see that it's basically done updating, and we should see something that says that it's listening somewhere in here. Okay, 942 listening on 9696, so it should be ready. So now we should be able to just close this and look for our NAS IP port 8087, and then we would get this user interface, which is very similar to the interfaces of the other applications. In here, it's going to immediately ask us to do the configuration for how we access the application, and we said we want to use forms logging, and we want it enabled. So now we're going to say here our username is going to be Prowlarr, password is going to be Prowlarr. You can choose your own password. This is just for the sake of the video series. And now we say that we want to save. Alright, so now the interface is our usual type of interface. And we have our settings here. And as you can see, it's a little different with the other applications on the menu on the left. We have our system here. Alright, everything is looking good. Let's just restart the application so that we validate that we are prompted for our credentials to log into the system, and we refresh. There we go. Now it's prompting us, so we select Prowlarr for the username and Prowlarr for the password, and we're in. Alright, the first thing we need to do here is within Prowlarr, we're going to go into the settings, but the settings here are quite different, right? In the indexers, if you click on the plus sign, you'll see that it's like a proxy, because this application can serve as a proxy for our indexers. Some indexers have, for example, captchas, right? And that's a little bit of a problem because automating with a captcha is hard, so we need to use for that something like Flare Solver. So if you have a Flare Solver container, you can configure it here to use that. In this case, I'm not going to do it, honestly. I don't use this part, but yeah, you can have like another proxy here, like a web proxy if you want, so that the connection goes to a proxy. It could be SOX4 or HTTP, but this is where you configure proxies. Then the next thing we need to do, and this is the important part for all of the applications, when we go here into apps, you see that it has applications and sync profiles, right? And if we go into sync profiles, it's just our standard profile, enable RSS feed, enable interactive search and automatic search, and minimum seeders 1, that's standard, right? So this is telling us that the applications that we set up in here are going to be synced in a specific way, right? So this application is going to reach out to all of the other applications that we configure here and set the configuration for the indexers on those. So what are we going to do here is we're going to click on the application plus. Let's configure Sonar. So we select Sonar. The name is going to be Sonar, and in here we want a full sync. A full sync, like it says here, it says that it will keep the app indexers fully in sync, and any changes that are made in Prowlarr are then synced to the application. So this is what we want. We want Prowlarr to be the source of truth for the indexers. So that's what we're going to do. And then in this case, what we're going to do here is we're going to set the Prowlarr server, which is our NAS IP. So we're going to put the IP of our NAS, and then we're going to put the container port. I mean, not the container, the host port, which is 8087. The container is listening on 9696, if I remember correctly, but we want the actual host port that we mapped to Prowlarr. So it's going to be this, and then we're going to be configuring our Sonar settings. So Sonar, we have it running on port 8082, if I'm not mistaken. We can check it here. Yes, 8082. So IP of our NAS, port. Then we need to get the API key. Remember I mentioned that when we were setting up Sonar. So we're going to go into Sonar. We are going to go into General, Security, and then we're going to get this API key. We can copy it from here. Then we go back into Prowlarr and we paste it here. And now we validate that Sonar is able to connect with, the Prowlarr is able to connect with Sonar by clicking the test button. And as you can see, we got the check mark, so that means it was successful. It was able to connect, so we click save. And now Sonar is ready to receive the configurations in here for the indexers from Prowlarr. It still doesn't have anything because we have not configured that. So let's continue setting up all of our other applications. So let's in here switch to 8083, which is radar. All right. And we're gonna have this ready so that we can then pass the API. So here we are. Let's go back here. We add a new one. We select radar, full sync, and then here again we switch this to 8087, and the IP of our NAS, and then we do the same thing down here, but it's gonna be 8083 for radar because that's the port that we specified. And then we go get the API key, we put it here, we check that it connects, and it was successful, so we save it. Now we have radar and Sonar already configured. Let's go switch to the next application, which is 8084 the port, and that'll bring us to LiDAR. So LiDAR, we go again here into the settings, we go into general, and we have the API ready. We copy that API, we say we want to add LiDAR, we put that API in there, LiDAR, full sync, and then here once again IP of our NAS and the port of LiDAR, which is 8084. And then that goes down here. This is 8087 here for Prowlarr, and now we validate that it is able to connect. Okay, successful, we save it. Now we have LiDAR also configured. Next application that we have to set up will be 8085, which is Mylar. Sorry, I had an extra little bit in the URL that I needed to clean up. We go into configuration, and then we go into the interface, and we just see the Mylar API key here. So we grab this Mylar API, and we go back here, we select Mylar, put the API here we put the IP of our NAS, port 8087 for Prowlarr, and port 8085 for Mylar, right? Yes. So now we test it. It connected successfully. We save. We have Mylar. Now we can switch to port 8086, which would be our reader. And as usual, we're going to go into Prowlarr. We're going to select to add, and then we're going to select reader. We're going to put the IP of our NAS with the port 8087 for Prowlarr, 8086 for reader. The name is going to be reader. It's going to be a full sync, and we need the API key. So we go into settings, general, and we copy the API key. We put it in here and we test, and it was successful, so we save it. So now we have also configured reader. So our downloaders are configured here: sonar, radar, lidar, mylar, and reader. We have all our downloaders here, so everything is looking good. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go into the download clients, but in here it says that adding a download client here, it just allows you to send a release directly from the Prowlarr user interface when you're doing manual searches. But I honestly have never needed to do this. I always search directly in the R's, not in Prowlarr. So I'm not gonna configure this. You can do it if you want. You can search on the documentation what it is for, but I never needed it, so I'm not gonna install it. Notification. Again, if you wanna send notifications, you're free to do it here. I don't do it, so I'm just gonna skip it. Tags. I'm not gonna do anything here. In general, once again, we have our forms. It's enabled. We have our user and password, etc. Everything looks good. We don't use a proxy, so everything looks good here. Nothing to change. And the user interface, also nothing to change, so it's looking good. So far our main settings have been configured. Now if we go into the indexers, we notice that there are no indexers. So if we go into, for example, sonar here, let's go back to sonar, we'll see that we still don't have any indexers here because there's nothing to synchronize. So what we need to do here is we need to go into indexers, and then we're going to look for indexers to use. For that, we click on the add indexer button on the top here, and then we'll get a list, right? This list has a lot of things. So what I would recommend is, first we're going to do this. We are going to make sure that the privacy is that they're public sites, and then the language will be the language that you use. In my case, I'm going to use English US. So now we have filtered it down now to a list of public sites, and they are for English users. In here, then we can start also filtering, do I want Usenet or torrents? Let's start with Usenet. So here, the only free one that we have is bin search. So we could just select bin search here, and we're going to add it as bin search. We're going to enable it, and additionally, the redirect is not necessary to do anything here. It's blocked. And then the sync profile here, we don't have any options but standard because that's the only thing that we have created. And then the base URL that Prowlarr will use for request to the site, we have to select that one because it's the only option. And then the tags to specify indexer proxies or which apps the indexer is synced to. Applications without one or more matching indexer tags will not be synced to. In this case, for now, let's just test that it connects to bin search. Alright, it was able to connect, so now we can save it. And now we should see that it shows up in our list here. When I was setting up this, I didn't specify any tags. They're not really necessary, so don't worry about it. I forgot to mention that. So now we have the only NZB that we have that is private. But if you have subscription to another one, you could go, for example, into the semi-private. Semi-private means that you need to create an account with them. for it to work. And for example, NZB index is an option, and you can go to their website and create an account, and then once you create that account, then you should be able to put your API key in here. So in that case, what you would do is you would create your account, put your API, and then you test that, because right now without the API key it should fail, right? It says that I need an API key. Now I have added using my own API key, so you see it here as an option too. You also have the option of fully private Usenet indexers. For example, NZB Geek is a very famous one. You have NZB Planet, which is also very famous. So you can go there and look for an account. Many of these websites, like Headphones VIP, it's private, so in order to get access you need to actually pay a membership to have access to those. So that's why I suggested that you go with public or semi-private. Okay, now we have two NZB indexers. Now let's switch to torrents, and in here we're gonna go specifically with public. So here it's when we have a lot of options, right? So we, for example, can select I don't know why it says Chinese. It was supposed to be only English. I guess they didn't specify that in here. But yeah, for example, 1337X. This is a good one. So we can select this one, and we can pick one of their URLs. They have a lot of them. So let's go with the first one. And then how do you want to download? You can pick the magnet link or the actual torrent. I prefer magnets, honestly. So let's keep it with the magnets, and sort requested by seeders. We want to see the ones that have the most amount of people sharing at the top. So we select seeders descending, and then we test that, and it should connect to the website, and then we should just be able to add it because we got the check mark. So now we have added another one, but this one is not Usenet, this is torrent, and we keep on doing that. For example, if we want anime, we can go for Anidex, for example. We select it, and we say we want Japanese. So, and English. So it searches for both English and Japanese names. Where's English? Great Britain? No. Is there US? Let me see. Spanish. I guess we have to use Great Britain, because there's no US, or it doesn't seem to be. Alright, so then we test if it connects. Okay, this one is failing. Let's try. Okay, that's the only one, so looks like we cannot add any text. We cancel that. That will happen whenever you're looking for indexers. Some of them will fail, so you just keep on trying others. Let's try anime time. See if we're able to connect to this one. Okay, this is successful, so we save it. Anirina is a good one too, so let's go for Anirina and test it. Alright, we add it, and you keep on doing this basically. You keep on looking for different free options that you have here, or if you have a membership you use a semi-private, or if you're paying for it you use a private one. And you keep adding as many as you can. As many as you can. That's the key, because you have several options to look for the files that you need. And let's just add a few more here. This one, let's see if it works. Okay, we start with a magnet. If it doesn't work, we try torrent. Alright, sort requested from seeders, descending, test. Alright, so that's like a generic one. That's not specifically for anime. Let's see what else. Bit search is a public one. We want it by seeders. We test. We add it. What else? Another good one. BTMET is a decent one. So we go there. Sort them by relevance, I guess. It doesn't have another option. Alright, this one did not work. So let's continue. Alright, bolt torrent. Let's try this one. Seeders. If you can, always try to go with the seeders. Alright. Ebook Bay. This is for books, so that's good for Radar. Alright, this one didn't work, so let's continue. ext torrents by Cedars, test, add. Extra torrents is another good one usually, so let's try that. Alright, we add it. So you keep on going. You can even add like in the Internet Archive, so that's another thing to do. And we want to be able to use magnets, so don't check that. Here we don't have a way, so I guess size will be like the greatest size will be most likely the one. Does it work? Looks like it's not gonna work. Alright, it worked, so we add it. Okay, I think we have enough options here to showcase what we wanted to do. So we are going to add one last one, and that's going to be it for this part. So we add that, and as you can see here, we've spent some time adding some indexers. We have 2 NZB ones, we have a bunch of torrent ones, and the trick should be that when we go back into Sonar now and we refresh, it should start syncing. So all of the indexers that we have configured in Prowlarr should now start passing to Sonar as already configured. Okay, the application is a little slow, let's give it some time. And it loaded, and as you can see, without us having to come into the application, everything is syncing. And you see that it says parentheses Prowlarr, so that means that this came synced from Prowlarr into our Sonar. Now if we do the same thing and we go here into Radar, we should see also coming into Radar. If we go into LiDAR, we should see that LiDAR is also getting them. If we go into Mylar, it should also, oh, extra stuff in the, there we go. If we go here and we go into the search providers, eventually it'll start populating them in here. So we just have to give it time, and it'll sync to all of the applications that we have. So if we go here into Radar, it's already coming to Radar. With Mylar, it's very picky because it has to have like the indexer that we pick. It's not gonna come up in here if they don't have a section for books. So that's why it's very beneficial that you add as many as you can here, so that then you can get at least 1 or 2 providers into Mylar to look for books. The problem probably is that one of these doesn't have like the books recognized. We can try to sync the indexers to see if it decides to pop up in here, but that's what I've noticed, that for Mylar it's a little bit of a hit and miss because the categories don't sync out properly. But as we can see, it's already working for all of the other applications. So that was the important thing, that we could see that now our indexers are managed by Prowlarr. And then here in Prowlarr, we don't have to do anything else. We have the opportunity here to see statistics about the different indexers that we added. It'll also tell us how many grabs have been done by each of the applications that we have configured. So it should be syncing everything. Now we have our indexers. We can do a search directly from here, for example, for a series. Let's say Bleach. Well, we haven't specified like an episode or anything, so it's probably gonna take a long time, because you would normally do like Bleach season number, episode number, and then it starts looking for that. But yeah, you can look for files directly here in Prowlarr, but honestly it's better if you do it in the R's. That's what I usually do. Our configuration is complete. Everything is set up in the settings, everything is set up in the indexers, everything is synchronizing among them, so it looks like everything's good. Here, when you see this type of message, it means that the indexer was disabled because for some reason it failed when it was trying to connect to it. Don't worry, you normally just test it again, and if it responds, it'll become healthy again and it'll be enabled. And it does like a check every day or so, so it should be fine. As long as you have enough added here, you should have enough to download the content. So yes, that's it for Prowlarr. This video was a little bit long, but now we have our indexers automatically configured and updated and everything. As you can see, after testing, everything went back to healthy. Hope you liked it. That's it for this one.